you. Thank you. That was a great introduction. Yeah, so that's true. I am a professor of anthropology and an archaeologist at Indiana University, South Bend in Notre Dame. My work centers a lot of my research that I do. Anthropology is a study of what makes us human. That's kind of the broad question that we're asking there. And we do this by looking at kind of the everyday people. Historians look at big men, people like Havilah Beardsley, for example, or Clement Studebaker, somebody like that. Anthropologists are more concerned about what the everyday people do in history and throughout the world, the majority of us. And so we all have kind of a larger research question. We never actually answer it. We just contribute to that question by coming up with some data and answering smaller questions. And my large research question is about sex and power. I know it's 11 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday. And I don't want to start any tomfoolery in any gardens. But I'm very interested in how women in particular use sexuality and aesthetics and beautification for our bodies and our homes, which are analogous in many ways, in order to navigate systems of power in society. Men have pretty much always, anytime you go back and look at any remains of humans or whatever, they've pretty much always been bigger, faster, stronger, and they've all been leaders, despite feminist anthropologists like myself looking for this great place that women ruled. It's never happened. It's always been men. So I'm interested in how we navigate that social and physical power with our own power, soft power, and that's the thing I study. Well, I know a few of you are like, where did the bricks come in? I'll tell you, although a few of you are like, nah, actually, I'd rather hear about sex and power all morning, to be honest with you. In that case, you have my contact information. You can reach out to me any point in time if you want to hear about sex and power. But not every archaeologist, a lot of archaeologists have a material specialty, because that's what we're interested in, is material, the way that humans uniquely use material. Other creatures don't do that. Beavers build dams, for example, but they don't have like culture tied into the dam. You never see a beaver going along and seeing a dam and being like, that's a great example of an Italianate. And they don't do that. They just don't build that into it. And we do. So archaeologists are interested in material, and a lot of us have these material specialties, things that we're just better at analyzing and understanding than other archaeologists. It's something that we have an interest in. One of the more popular ones is stone tools, things like spear points and lithics and things like that. Others are faunal remains, which are pieces of bone and animal that we find archaeologically. But mine's a bit unique. I study historic bricks. There's very, very few archaeologists who specifically study bricks. In fact, most archaeologists consider them a nuisance. And when they find brick pieces in their unit, they pretty much just discard them like they do with rocks, for example, considering them basically just to be a human-made rock. However, my research has shown that there's a lot of information we can get from bricks. And I've done some of the largest research on historic bricks anywhere at any time. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Some of the information that I have about bricks. It'll start off pretty sciencey, and then it's going to get more about the culture behind it, and why they're important. So in this area, there are really two main types of bricks. There's all kinds of bricks all over the country and all over the world. We've been using bricks and blocks to build forever. But really, there are two main ones in this area. You have red ones, and you have yellow ones. And of course, there's a lot of variants that kind of blend together. And if you know Chicago Common bricks, for example, those are very salmon-y colors, so mixtures of yellow and red. But really, we just have these two, reds and yellows. And over my time of studying bricks, I started getting in the habit of calling the yellow ones blondes, which is why that's what we're talking about today, is these yellow bricks. Because first of all, they have a lot more cultural impact in the area than the red ones. And of course, like the title says, blondes have more fun. I see you, sweetie, right there. Killing it with that pixie. And the yellow bricks that are in the area have a lot more in common than just good looks, which all blondes, of course, have. They have really unique histories, and they've got really unique ways that people connect with them and attach their identity to them. Identity questions and politics and discussions are an emotional topic today, but it's certainly one that we all have, connecting ourselves with material. That's something we do as people, not so much beavers. So if you see the slide back there, these bricks all look pretty much the same. despite being in 3 radically different places. These are from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. These are from the campus at the University of Notre Dame. And those are from a town up by Holland, Michigan, called Zeeland, where they made Veniclase and bricks, which we'll talk about. So what I wanted to do is be able to tell the difference. How do we tell the difference between them? Because just looking at them isn't quite enough. And the reason for that is a lot of these bricks are in historic buildings, culturally important buildings. And when one of these bricks is damaged, you have to replace it with a like brick, a brick that's made of the same material and that was fired in the same way. Otherwise, if you have bricks of variable material in there, as I think you all know, this area of the world has some very mercurial weather. I'm not originally from here. Some of you will pick up the accent. I'm from northern Alaska. But it's what do you say here? If you don't like the weather, wait an hour. It'll change. And that's absolutely true. And in that mercurial weather, you'll have things that freeze and thaw and expand and contract rapidly a lot, many times even over a day. And if you have bricks that are made of different materials, they'll expand and contract at different rates. And eventually one will start to wiggle in there and get some space that water will get into. And then they'll make even bigger space, and you can have spalling and cracking and breaking of your bricks, which is structurally unwise, and it's just aesthetically unappealing. So you have to replace them with a brick that fits the bricks around it. So there's a pragmatic thing behind this as well. When we are reusing old bricks, which you do frequently, they'll tear down an old building that had old bricks, we'll adaptively reuse those bricks in another place, either for repairs in buildings like these, or sometimes to make brand new buildings. So I came up with a question. Anthropology is a science. And science doesn't always mean beakers and things like that. Science just means that we're asking a question and we're answering it through a very specific method. We're seeing what other people said about it. We're doing our own experiments. We're publishing our results and letting other people say, yeah, I think I agree, or we don't. And so my main questions were, how do we tell those bricks apart? Can we tell them apart? Better than just somebody going out in the field and saying, yeah, I think these are the same bricks, and then end up being wrong and doing damage to a historically relevant building. And if so, then can we reuse them? Once we can tell them apart, if they look that much alike, can we reuse them? And that's where all of this started. And so I started looking in this area here at the yellow bricks because I got my Ph.D. at Notre Dame. So I had a ready supply of bricks there. And has anybody heard of the story of Notre Dame bricks? One or two of you, for sure. You'll hear a little bit more about them today. But there was a steady supply of brick buildings there to look at, and I started looking at those. And then comparing them to other yellow bricks in South Bend. And as I did, I'm like, well, I mean, I can't just go into South Bend. Well, I heard this place out by Hobart. Let's look at some bricks there. And then I went to Chicago, and then why not go to Milwaukee? And then and by the time that was over, I was knee deep in bricks, sometimes literally. And the area I was looking at, because bricks are made from clay, was places that had their clay pulled from what was the former Lake Chicago. It's not Lake Michigan, but at one point it was much larger. Is anybody familiar with Chicago, especially the south side? A little bit. There's a few places right here in Roseland by Pullman, where I did my dissertation work, that have kind of large hills. And those are old moraines where glaciers had pushed silt and till up at one point and then receded. And when they did, they left a lot of clay there, and a lot of very calcareous clay. So it's clay that has a lot of calcium in it, a lot of magnesium too. And it's all along this little strip here. And that's also where we have some of the largest brick makers historically in the region, with probably the most amount of them being made in Hobart, but also quite a lot in Milwaukee, Zeeland up here, South Bend. Chicago had a lot, especially on the south side. So these are the places I went for some samples: Milwaukee, Chicago, Hobart, South Bend, and Zeeland. And I sampled hundreds of bricks. The largest paper done up until that date looked at about 60 or 70 bricks that were in 2 separate sites about 10 miles apart. I looked at over 700 bricks from 50 buildings over 5 states. I'm a massive amount of bricks. I spent a lot of time in alleys in cities I don't know, wearing short shorts in the summertime and flips with a like $20,000 ray gun, which I'll talk about in a second, putting it up to the bricks as there's people of all sorts coming up and talking to me, which was absolutely amazing and probably my favorite part of it. I could have wrote an entirely separate paper about all the beautiful and fascinating people I met who was like, why is this chick here in the alley with a literal ray gun? Stand still a moment, I'll tell you. So that's where I did a lot of the sampling for the work that I came up with. And these are some of the methods I used. So started off with a visual inspection. What does the brick look like? What does its texture look like? How does it feel? Some bricks are fired really, really, really low temperatures, and you can like carve your name in them a little bit. Others are fired at high temperatures, and they're vitrified to a degree. Vitrification is when ceramic gets a little bit of a glassy surface. I also looked at the physical dimensions when available. If a brick's in a wall, you've only got so many dimensions you can get, but otherwise, we'll measure them. I also did a Mohs hardness test on them. So a Mohs hardness test is when one is trying to determine the hardness of something by scratching it with a standard, usually steel. And you get a number from 0 or 1 to being the softest, up to much harder to a diamond. I used a Munsell color book. So archaeologists and geologists, people that work with the soil, have these books that have what are basically paint chips inside them. Inappropriately expensive books. But they're the ones that everybody uses, and that's probably why they're so expensive for what is like just a couple dozen paint chips. So we have these pages that look like this, and you take the page here, and you put that circle, which is a hole, when it's not on a thing like this, and put it over the soil and try to see which one matches your soil. So when you're digging in the dirt, you can go back later. Since archaeology is a destructive science, we destroy the things that we're digging in as we're pulling them up, the ground and the context. You can go and record that, what kind of soil it was. So I used that, because bricks are made from the soil. I also used the ray gun I told you about, which is a portable X-ray fluorescence device, which is some more like cooler words I've learned how to say. And what it is it looks like a hairdryer. And I'm sure all of you have played pool or seen somebody play pool, right? You break to start the game. There's a little triangle of balls, and you have somebody with a cue stick, hits the cue ball, and the balls all fire out. Now, the person that's doing that fires the cue ball and it hits the triangle of balls, is not only shooting the cue ball, but rays are bouncing on, in this case, light waves, are bouncing off of those balls, and you're seeing them. So you're reading them as well, knowing, oh, that's where the 8 ball went, there's where the 1 went, that's where the green ball went, or whatever it is. You're seeing the light waves that bounce off of them and reading where they are, and getting an understanding of how the billiard table looks now. And a portable X-ray fluorescence device works in a very similar way. It looks like a big hairdryer, and it fires an X-ray, which is a particle or a wave, depending on its form. And then when it hits a surface, it pops all these electrons out from whatever it hits. And based upon how many electrons they are and the way they're reacting, the device can pick out what elements and material are inside that thing. In the same way that you can tell what balls are doing what on the billiard table when you hit them with your pool cue. It's also very expensive. And I would take it in with me, like it's in this big black plastic case, but I would still, when I would go to eat in one of these cities, I would take it like in with me and set it there like it was the nuclear football or something. Not that I was always in a bad part of town or whatever. I just knew I would be the grad student who lost a $20,000 piece of equipment. Because I'm blonde. We'll circle back to that. The next thing I did is ASTM C67 compression testing. So that's when I could actually get a brick and it's not just stuck in a wall. I would take samples back to Notre Dame and use this machine to measure their compressive strength. That's what this is here. Basically, it's just a brick squisher. And for anybody who's ever wondered, like what happens when you squeeze a brick and just crush it, they explode, which I didn't know. How the hell would I know that? Like, how often do you see a brick break? So I've never seen anyone do this before, but I put it in the little brick eater, and it sat there all happy squeezing it, and then it just blows out everywhere. So there was a good video of it, but I couldn't mute out the things I said. Because I'm going to make it through this one, I think, but I'm also famously known on both campuses as a professor with probably the most foul mouth in history. It is so bad. But I think we're going to make it through this one today, I think. I've set high goals. And one of the things that you do first, by the way, is you have to cut the bricks in half. That way the compression is spread over an equal area, so to speak. These ones are from a part that's still mortared together, so we're testing that as well. But you cut them in half. This brick saw, which is also cool, because I didn't even think you could cut a brick in half really until I started all this. I didn't know where they got little bricks. I thought they just made little bricks. And so in doing so, you can also learn about the interior of a brick and what it looks like. And in particular, you can see some huge variances here. So this is a type of red brick that's popular pretty much everywhere. Everybody's seen red brick. I mean, that's why there's a crayon called brick red. But you can learn a lot about it that you couldn't have from the outside. You see all this black in here, which is carbon from where it was, first of all, had some organic stuff in there that burned while it was being fired, but also at the same time, it just was fired really, really, really long and smoldered. If anybody knows anything about combustion, this is essentially what a backdraft is in a building, and that the brick was sitting there smoldering, didn't have enough oxygen for a very long time, so it got very, very, very dark inside. Just didn't have enough oxygen and didn't burn completely. These are different. First of all, not only did they burn more evenly, but they were pugged much, much more intensely. So what I mean by pugging is when you get clay, you've got to take a machine or people and go through and get out all the rocks and things, because a rock is going to be made of a different material than the clay, and like we've already discussed, if it's made of a different material, it'll expand and contract at different rates, and then you kind of have what's effectively a tumor inside your brick. So that's called pugging, this machine that just kind of gets all the impurities out, so to speak. And holy smokes, like that looks like a stick of butter. It's just, not only is it butter yellow, but it's just, there's nothing in it. Like every other brick has lots of these little pieces in there. Any brick you find anywhere, but not these, which already told me quite a lot about how they were made, and that whoever made them put a lot of care into them. Because it takes a lot longer to get out all those little bricks. They were paying a lot of attention. These in particular are Notre Dame bricks, which were largely handmade and fired at extremely low temperatures. So we already learned a little bit about that process. The bricks were supposedly made by the brothers and the priests on campus. I think you can pretty much bet something important to you that, almost lost one there. You can bet something important to you that the priests were not out there in the sweltering heat making bricks, probably the brothers, and almost certainly a lot of just hired hands, especially Irish immigrants to the area. We'll talk about that more in a minute. So the results of all that. Well, I learned that the outside of a brick can be extremely variable, the way it looks. It's cracks, spalling, colors, shades, all that. Same thing with the physical dimensions, even though they're largely standardized now. The Mohs that I told you about, its hardness, it's between a 3.4 and a 4.5. So pretty soft, especially Notre Dame ones. You can just scratch your name into it, or initials, like many people have done over the years. Some of the colors are quite homogeneous, though, especially among the value, which is like the shade of red or shade of yellow. That compression testing we did shows that softer bricks are stronger than expected, with some of the older Notre Dame bricks still being able to be effectively used in a lot of modern architecture and construction. And the PXRF results were the most promising. Those showed that unlike other studies that have been done on a small amount of bricks, using like a dozen different zapping points on each brick, you can kind of fast and dirty, like I point out again, I'm in the alleys of Chicago in the summer. Like, it can get scary. So I'm zapping these bricks as fast as possible, going from one brick to the other, which became a very pragmatic way of doing it. And if you're going to go down in the field looking for bricks that you can use for a construction project, you can't just go through and take dozens of readings on each brick and picking them up on a little pillow. No. You're just kind of picking them up really fast, zapping them, going on to the next thing. And my work showed that you can do that. And in fact, statistically, this is just an example of a scatter plot here, we can actually parse the chemicals out really quite well. Statistically, we were able to tell these bricks are from Milwaukee, these bricks are from Chicago, these bricks are from Hobart, these bricks are from wherever. Even bricks that were from a similar place, but of a different era. So for example, very early bricks at the campus of Notre Dame versus much later ones. So for example, one's made in, say, like 1850 versus one's made in 1890. And we could see the difference there, just based on the chemical profiles of those bricks. Absolutely incredible, if I may say so myself. Some of this groundbreaking research in human history. It is the largest chemical study of a historic brick that's ever been done anywhere in the world. And so we learned a lot, people did, about bricks, not only archaeologists, but people who use them in construction, people who adaptively reuse and recycle them, which is important because bricks take a lot of fuel to make, especially older bricks like that did. And so it's nice to be able to reuse them when you tear down an old factory or something that perhaps doesn't have as much historical significance as a building that can now be a donor for those bricks, or donee. But like I said, anthropologists study what it means to be human, not a brick. And we have a phrase in archaeology, which is people, not pots. Because a lot of people like to study pots, because pots are cool, right? Not bricks. Nobody likes bricks. I like bricks. Most people like pots. Look, I found a pot shard. And you can find a whole brick wall, and they're like, who cares? But we study...
We'll save a spot for you at the ceramic showcase.
You should. You should, absolutely. That would be a fantastic panel. But yeah, we studied the people, not the pots. So what was happening with the people behind these bricks? And what do they mean for us now, beyond just old buildings? Well, let's take Milwaukee, for example. Milwaukee's nickname is the Cream City. And it's not called the Cream City because of dairy products, which really weren't made all that close, maybe closer to Racine, or because of beer, for that matter. It was called the Cream City because of all the cream-colored bricks, the blondes, out there having more fun. And that's why it got the nickname the Cream City, because it had so many original buildings made of that cream-colored brick, which is unique. Bricks are usually red, right? There's lots of colors of bricks. There's even blue bricks out there, but which is hard to say, and I'm glad I didn't swear during that one. But no, the Cream City, the cream bricks are distinctive, and that's how it got its nickname. It's so important to the city, which have you all been to Milwaukee? I love Milwaukee. It's such a fun city. I live in South Bend, but it's like if South Bend and Chicago had a kid. Just like a middle kid right there in the middle. It's like the Goldilocks city.
I remember driving into Milwaukee and thinking about all the red brick.
Yeah?
But it's cream in the older part or something?
Yeah, you probably saw a lot of red brick. Definitely in the older part, especially the south part of the town, there's a lot of cream brick. And it's so important that that's why the background of the Milwaukee Bucks' logo is cream. And when they had their throwback jerseys, it said Cream City. Books have been written about it. There's historical placards like the one up there talking about the Cream City in Milwaukee. All because largely of a firm called Burnham, where they made bricks. These are some of the people who are doing that. These are handmade bricks, because these are the forms that they use to make them. So if you could picture like an ice cube tray, for example, they got something like that they're taking, and they're taking wet pugged clay, meaning they've already gone through and got all the rocks and stones and things like that up, the sticks, whatever, and slapping it in there, making it fit real well. And then somebody takes this tray of at least one brick in it, but sometimes like 3 or 4, over to a place, they turn it upside down to dry it in the sun for a while, and then it goes on to the point where it's burned in a kiln. A lot of work, heavy work, absolutely incredibly physically demanding labor, but it's what a lot of our Great Lakes cities are built upon, are these immigrants that came here to America thinking, hey, this is a great place for immigrants, because it was then, and they made a lot of the cities, our cities for us. Burnham and Root? No. They just have the same last name. That's a great question, though. That's a great question. And here's an example of some of the Cream City bricks. So it's Trinity Lutheran Church. I put this one in here because it's historically significant, but also because you can see that the Cream City bricks don't always stay cream if you don't take care of them. It's a sort of a combination of biological things and then just soot and pollution from the city that can turn these bricks black. That church also caught fire, but not on the outside. And it was pretty limited. Anyways, this is another one here, another example of it called Turner Hall, one of the largest, most well-known buildings in Milwaukee. Not called so because the person that opened its last name was Turner, but because that's where they did gymnastics and athletics in the 1890s. And Turner is German for, anybody else in here speak German? Okay.
Were they German, wasn't it a German kind of organization?
Super German, yeah. Milwaukee still is super German. They've got a German restaurant there, by the way, that's just got amazing food. And it's like one of those places where like it shows all the people that have been there, like Eddie Van Halen and
The word
the
for
Pope.
a sneaker in German is Turnschuhe.
Turnschuhe, yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. It's Turnschuhe.
What does it mean in German?
Tennis shoe or sneaker, or it's interesting you said sneaker. Are you from the East Coast?
I'm sorry?
It's interesting you said sneaker. Are you from the
Yeah,
East Coast?
right.
No, you're not from the East Coast.
No, I use sneaker because I would say tennis shoe. I'm from Iowa.
Okay, fair enough. Those little linguistic nuances are interesting. If it was in Chicago, you would have said gym shoes for sure. Another one that's absolutely massive is the Pabst Brewery complex. The whole complex is done in these cream bricks. So that's another one that's a very obvious Milwaukee site that people see still means a lot to the community, means a lot to the city. And generations of people worked here. And they have that identity, Milwaukee, of course, with beer and with brewing, and it's all connected there. And this is the material thing they drive past every day. They walk past every day. The people that work there are walking into that building every day. So the colors of that brick and just the mana it gives off are important because that's just a part of your surroundings.
So did that have to be cleaned though? Was it really dark at one time?
Some of them have been. Others have kind of got away with it because they're less by polluted areas, or they just didn't get attacked by that biologic, which is a form of a fungus, if I remember right. Great question. The Pabst Brewery complex is now being adaptively reused and recycled for the most part. They're turning into apartments, a lot of apartments there, meeting spaces, dance halls. So it's still an active and important part of the Milwaukee identity. What it means to be from Milwaukee is, in part, these bricks. Another one's Hobart, Indiana, right here in Indiana. You've got their school mascot, which is, I just suddenly forgot his name. He's got a name though, like an actual, Johann. It's Johann, there we go. Johann, yes, the brick maker or bricklayer. Hobart had a massive brick making industry there in the late 1800s and early 1900s, which we might talk about it a little bit more at the end, and a somewhat interesting anecdote. But everything in there is brick now. Everything, literally everything. You can't go anywhere without it being brick something. The brick house, bar and grill. What is this? Oh, that's the Hobart's like seal. Oh yeah, but there's Johann. The brick yard. There's like a medical building called the Brickyard. It's nothing to do with bricks. It's not even made of them, but it's called bricks just because it's there. Like everything is brick something. Brick house, bricklayer, this. So it's all a huge part of the identity of what it means to be in Hobart. If you grew up there, if you live there, you're connecting with the past, with the people who made the bricks, and with everybody who spent the past century and a half living in that area, interacting with those bricks, making them a part of your identity. And their high school, yeah, their teams are called the Brickies. Who wants to be a Brickie? That's terrible. That's terrible. What do we? What's this in Elkhart? Who do you have here? There's Minutemen. Lions. Lions are freaking scary.
Blue blazers.
Was a blazer, yeah. They combined the
Hey,
high
don't
schools.
start this discussion.
All right. Well, there are some cool mascots. One's the Panthers, right? Is the Northwood or Northridge are Panthers. Panthers are scary. That's awesome.
Jimmy's.
All right, so there's some excellent examples of a similar mascot in Elkhart, whereby, yeah, and who wants to be a Jimmy? Like, it's not a shot at any of you, but nobody really wants. Like, you can't be on this field yelling, "Let's go, Jimmys." I was.
Oh, we do.
Same thing with Brickies, but they still adopt it and they still think it's important. They love it. I mean, then because it's a part of their identity. It's a part of who they are. If you go to Hobart High School, you're a Brickie, whether you like it or not, and it's a part of your deep identity. Similarly, in Zeeland, Michigan, which is also pretty much the same thing as Holland, Michigan, there was a massive influence of Dutch brick making. The Dutch built a lot of brick making operations. They did a lot of brick making in Holland itself. mostly through this company called the Viniclays and Brick Company. Why does it do that? Why did it? Oh, it's still trying to read. It's still, my closed caption is still reading the first slide.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's doing it over and over again. Are you not listening to me right now? Don't worry about that. Hopefully nobody needed the closed captioning. You're like, this chick talks so slow and she's so repetitive. You get it. So this is an early drawing, painting of the Viniclays and Brick Company in Holland, Michigan. Absolutely massive up there. And the interesting thing about those is not only did they make these really pretty yellow cream bricks, which by the way, Notre Dame bought many of, so we've had a lot of fires on campus. Those buildings love to burn down. And Washington Hall, which has not burned down, was built with some Zealander Viniclays and bricks. I'm pretty sure the repairs to St. Ed's were, and some of them for the administration building, which is Golden Dome. So they are somewhat interchangeable in that regard, but they also brought Dutch styles with them, which, so you're not just seeing the bricks, you're seeing the way that they're laid. Like in here where they're using alternating colors of bricks with the reds and the creams to make those neat designs and the kind of little eyebrows over the windows there. And you've got these put into place. Oftentimes they'll turn them, so these here are shown in a different direction than the ones around it. Absolutely beautiful. Here's another building. Just stop doing the closed captioning. You're going to confuse people. I'm confusing people. I'm confusing myself. All right, here's another wonderful little building that remains in Holland. It's still they're still decorating over the windows here in the same way that Burnham and Root would have actually, or especially Salon Spencer Beeman, famously in the Pullman neighborhood of Chicago. But they're clearly using bricks as a decoration. Now, we're in Elkhart, so I feel like we should talk about Elkhart bricks a little bit. You don't really have that cool of bricks. Sorry. These communities do. You don't.
Boss bricks.
But what's that?
We have boss bricks.
Boss bricks?
Boss.
I'm not familiar with these bricks.
Boss or boss?
No, boss.
Ooh, tell me about these bricks.
And the old boss mansion is out on 16, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
They had their brickyard, and they were a yellowish brick, I think.
Interesting. There are these yellowish bricks here in Elkhart. There's some used as common brick on the back of the Lerner Theater. The whole huge wall back there is made of them, and there's a few others that I saw driving around town.
Yeah, it was a brickyard on 6.
That would make sense. That's north of here, right?
No, it's off Indiana Avenue.
You could drive back to Notre Dame taking 16.
Oh, that
County
thing.
Road 16.
Yeah.
That thing. Is it by a road called,
Napanee, Indiana.
Japanese Street.
yeah. I've heard of this place. If anybody thinks you know where if you know where it's at, I'd love to talk to you afterwards. I'll do it. I'll take one more look for it. But I've had probably half a dozen people tell me, oh yeah, they had a brick place in Elkhart that made cream bricks. I'm like, where is it? And they've told me, LaRue. That's the street I'm thinking it was off of. Now I'm lost. Anyways, I drove all over the western half of this county, all the way down to a different county, all the way up to Michigan. I've never found the place. Every time I feel like I'm getting punked a little bit. I leave there like crying. I need ice cream. No one loves me. So if you think you know where that's at, I would love to see it, of this one that's in Elkhart. But for the most part, you've got a lot of reds here, but interestingly, you do combine them in these styles here. I don't remember his name because Elkhart's never really been my bag. It's not a shot. Just live in South Bend. What was his name? Turnock or something like that. Yes, thank you. He uses these like this. So the Waterworks building, I think it is, I saw on the way in here down the street a little bit, has bricks of different color used in these ornamentation. He uses red brick and limestone, not yellow brick. But so there is some of this influence of using these contrasting colors in Elkhart for sure, which is really cool.
He also used Belden brick. Yeah.
Oh, he used Belden brick.
You're in it right now.
What's that?
You're in it.
Oh, he used on this house is Belden brick?
This is from Ohio.
Oh. We'll get to Belden in a moment. Here's some more about the Veneclays and Brick Company. It was two of the historical markers that were there, which I just took the picture to show that, hey, at least it was important they have a historical marker. Those are clearly blonde bricks. Hey, did anybody know what this is or where it's at?
Some kind of a power building of some sort?
Oh, yeah.
That's what kind of looks
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah, a lot of power. Anybody want to have another secondary? You just got a heck of a lot closer. That's actually way closer, too. This is a uranium conversion plant in Iran. Which is still there, by the way. It's still there. Can't bomb everything.
Should have known from this street sign.
Yeah.
Little red and white.
Yeah, you see that, and people are going to be driving like they're in Mishawaka. No time. What lane am I even in? Is this 2 lanes or 1? So these bricks are important to people. As we're kind of saying, and one of the most clear ways we can see the importance is the investment people are making in trying to make bricks that look like them. Because you can't make bricks like this anymore. You can't fire them that low heat. And you can't make them in kilns like that anymore. OSHA would have a bird. Like you just can't do that. Or about 20 different federal agencies wouldn't really enjoy that. So you do see a lot of people trying to make these kind of almost throwback bricks. These are made by the building company. So for those of you who don't know, all the brick at the University of Notre Dame, through all the 19th century buildings, so it's all through the 1800s, was made on campus. And then after about 1900, they closed it down, didn't really build anything for a few years, scrapped together some bricks that they had from buildings that they had torn down. There was a stable, for example, that was absolutely massive. They tore that down and reused those bricks. But in about 1920, they started using bricks from a company called Belden, one of whom was a graduate at Notre Dame. And if you know anything about Notre Dame, once you've got family at Notre Dame, they're like the Corleones. Like you're going to have family at Notre Dame. They're dug in like ticks at that university. They've got like half a dozen of them that have gone through there, maybe even more of the Belden family. And they now have a huge brick operation in Ohio, where a lot of bricks come through Ohio, because there's just a lot of clay there. And they provide all the bricks for the university ever since about 1920. There might be a couple errant walls here and there, but for the most part, it's this really homogeneous change from one to the other. So this is Belden bricks. They're making these new, they spent a fortune on it. I've had the opportunity to go out there and meet with Bob Belden and get a tour. It was incredibly fun, especially since they do have some of their old kilns in there to show you how they burn brick. And they don't really burn a whole lot in there anymore because, again, there's just a lot of coal, or wood for that matter. But it's still fascinating to see how they worked so hard to get bricks that match the color, the variation, the texture, so that they could have buildings that match on campus. Because if there's one thing about Notre Dame, it's got to be pretty and it's got to match. And you cannot tell a building from another. They've got to be all identical. And if anybody's ever been to the campus, they also don't like signs. So you've just got to like go from each building to the other, like sniffing it or something to tell if you're at the right one. It's frustrating, but that's who we are. And a lot of my work was there at the campus of the University of Notre Dame, and I was trying to show how some of these bricks are quite different. And like I said, we mentioned the Notre Dame brick story. So what it is, the story is really, it's really, you hear it all the time from people on campus, and especially during the summer right now when they're giving the tours. There's always some chick who's sunburned walking backwards talking to a group of about 20, 30 parents and kids who are taking pictures of things, and they're like, and of course, the bricks on campus were all made by the priests in the 1800s, and they made a fortune selling them, and that's how they were able to build the university. That's half true. Like I said, it sure wasn't the priests. No way were they out there in the hot sun slapping clay down and making bricks. Probably a few of the brothers, but a lot of it was immigrant labor, like we saw in Milwaukee, especially Irish immigrants, because they were Catholic, and Notre Dame wasn't a very popular school when it started, so especially being Catholic, which wasn't popular in the area at all. So they needed to get people interested in Irish Catholics. So they were like, well, I guess we'll take the Irish. which is how a French school became the Fighting Irish, by the way. And there's a different story about how the Fighting Irish came, but that's not important. Anyways, so what they would do then is Father Soren would end up paying them a lot of times in bricks, in material, because it wasn't a big school yet, and they didn't have a lot of money. And it was a lot of times we're just selling these bricks was able to keep the school going because they didn't charge $100 for a sweatshirt yet. And so they needed to have something to get money in tuition before they really started to get money in tuition, right? So they made these bricks, sold them all over South Bend, Mishawaka, and then the laborers would get bricks. So there's a whole neighborhood south of Notre Dame, just being torn apart by development, but there's still a lot of basements and chimneys in there where the brick is all made out of Notre Dame brick, and the house is built around it because they got those bricks in turn for their labor. And they're absolutely beautiful. They connect people there to the college. But there's a lot of questions because these are the bricks in the first building built on campus, the first brick building, which was called Old College. It's still there.
What year was that?
The Old College was built 1844.
Okay.
And this is it. It looks a little bit different now, not a whole lot. They just moved a window and a door. But it was the first brick building built on campus. The story goes that Father Soren and his band of trusty priests, 7 I think of them there were, got to Notre Dame on this really, really cold November night of 1843, I think it was 1842, 1843. And they got there, it was wicked cold. There was a log cabin there from the previous priest that had the area, but it was just a log cabin. So they wanted to build a brick building. They did, and they got all the clay from the lakes there and did the work themselves. It has a very bootstrap sounding theory to it, which fits in with the idea of college and Americana, even though no one actually goes up by their bootstraps. Everybody depends on people and the social input from each other. Nobody's actually lived that story. We all have family and friends and networks and culture and society that help bring us up. But nevertheless, the story sounds cool. And in this case, it turned out that wasn't true. My work showed that the bricks of Old College were dramatically different from those of the rest of the university. And as I did more researching, found out that, in fact, Father Soren had bought them from Alexis Coquillard, who's the founder of South Bend in the way that Havilah Beardsley is here in Elkhart. Founder, if you want to look at it like that. Colonizer, founder, a little bit of everything. But he made bricks in the area that is now downtown. If you know South Bend much, it would be up by Colfax and LaSalle. He had a spot there on the river. Coquillard, yeah. Or Coquillard. I don't speak a lot of French. I speak German fairly well. I don't speak a lot of French. I speak some. And the only reason I say it's probably Coquillard is I can't imagine a French person saying Coquillard. But it might be. I've heard about equal people saying Coquillard and as Coquillard, but obviously we can't ask because he's dead. All of his family's dead, and they're all Alexis too. They named everybody in that family Alexis Coquillard, or Coquillard. We really don't know, but I'm a Coquillard kind of girl. I stick with Coquillard, but it might be Coquillard. That's a great point. But that's how it's spelled: is Coquillard. So it's those double L's that throw you off a little bit, or throw me off. So we found out that Old College was in fact built with bricks that Father Soren bought from him, and that he made those, which changes that narrative a little bit. Doesn't make it any less cool. We still had a big brick making operation there. That's a huge part of our history and our identity. But it's a little bit more realistic now. This was the first brick building built with Notre Dame brick on campus. Meant to look very, very similar to what Father Soren had back in his home in France. And has now been eaten basically by Columba Hall, which was initially the Brothers Novitiate. Now it's kind of the retirement center. Corby used to be the retirement place for priests, but that's like the first stage, and then Columba is that's the next stage. I got all kinds of really probably inappropriate ways of referring to that, but it is closer to the cemetery on campus. It's another way to put it. The priests are actually buried right over here. They have their own special cemetery. So it's closer, let's just say that. Beautiful building, but it's kind of been eaten by it for the most part. It's this part here. It's got quite a bit built around it. And in the end, all this is really important, too, for the future, especially at Notre Dame. They want to have a chapel in every building. That's kind of a thing in Notre Dame. Every building has a chapel in it. And every room has a crucifix hanging in it as well. And just because I really nailed it with this one, I want to point out that when the guy came in to the room, well, I was teaching in the middle of my class, and it was in the brand new hall in Corbett, which is where the anthropology department is, which is the huge addition on the side of the stadium. He came in to put up the crucifix, because every room has one. And I kind of interrupted my class, and I asked him if he was the crucifix or upper. Or saved the moment. And it was such a good joke that I actually weaved it into this. And I do with a lot of things. Like, guys will come up and talk to me someplace, and they're like, "Hi, what's your name?" I'm like, "Lauren, let me tell you about the crucifix or upper." So anyways, now you've lived through that. But anyways, they want to have a chapel in every building. And Baden Hall, which is one of the oldest and most well-known buildings on campus, did not have a chapel. So the alumni was like, let's pay for a chapel, because that's what the alumni there does. And then, like, but it's got to be period, correct. It's got to fit in. So when you see it, it just looks, it's got to have the whole thing. The aesthetics, which is actually something that I study quite a lot and enjoy. So they did. When the guys at Notre Dame, who was in charge of a lot of that stuff, went out and found a building that had been torn. It was actually Drury's Brewery, which is like a alcohol intoxication test, just to say. Like, if you can say where you got your beer, you're probably walking home sober. But it only takes about one good whiskey for me. And I'm not going to be delirious. So they got the bricks there. And he's like, "Yay, we got Notre Dame bricks. We'll build this chapel. It'll blend in. It'll be beautiful." Except for the part where it didn't. It looks wildly different once you get on campus and see the difference in the shades. Maybe it doesn't stand out so much in here, and I don't know how many days I went over there trying to catch that light, but it just doesn't. You have to see it in person, and you're like, "Oh yeah, these are different." And so I did. I took samples of it too, and then tried to find out. And yep, that's not Notre Dame brick.
It's also a cross without a crucifix on a Catholic campus.
Is that a thing for them? I'm not a Catholic, actually. So every cross has to have a crucifix? Because the crucifix is a cross with a Jesus on it, right?
Protestant keeps the cross, keeps Christ off the cross. That's my understanding. And Catholics, if they wear a crucifix, it has the crucifix, it has Christ on the cross.
Not just a cross.
Right.
Fascinating.
That could be the Orangeman Irish, I suppose. Never mind, forget it.
I still think that's fascinating. So thank you for that. I learn more about Catholicism every time I'm there. I'm not actually a Catholic. So it's fascinating to learn about. But yeah, nope, that's not Notre Dame brick. Not at all. So oops. And then the alumni knew. They came to see it, and they're like, "Yeah, it doesn't match." And they're like, "But it is. It's Notre Dame brick." And they're like, "Yeah, but it doesn't match." And then like, "But it is." And then I did my work, and they're like, "It's not the brick." And they're like, "Shut up." So the universities actually ran a few big things about some of the other like engineering students or whatever that had done work on bricks. Not a word about me. That's okay. With that being said, I want to make sure I give some time to open it up for questions. I put this slide last because it has its own story behind it. Whenever I do any kind of public presentations, who's other than myself now, who's the archaeologist you know? Huh?
My cousin.
That was wrong.
Who's an archaeologist?
Yeah, you know.
I don't You don't like that.
I should have sent a syllabus out. Who's the most famous archaeologist ever?
Oh, you're going to say Indiana Jones.
Yes! I should have brought a whip.
That's a character.
Because now he's still known. So as an archaeologist, that's who I always get asked about. First thing, anytime. It's the point now I just tell people I'm an architect. Like if I get in an Uber, what do? I'm a dancer. Because I know if I say I'm an archaeologist, they're going to either ask if I have a whip, because I'm Indiana Jones, or they're going to be like, "So, you ever find any of those alien remains that built the pyramids?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." No, we did that. We did that because we're awesome as a species. And so when they ask about Indiana Jones, though, I was saying, no, there's nothing like Indiana Jones. There's never anything like that. The only accurate thing Indiana Jones ever said was that almost all archaeology is done in a library, and that's true. So it's not that exciting. We don't go around with like guns and lanterns and stuff down like, I don't know, some kind of pathway in some pyramid. Except for the part where we do. So in Hobart, they have this massive brick-making operation that had been torn down and is now all grown over with some very thick vegetation. Like, these are body dumping woods. Like, this is where, like, Dateline just has an office there. And so I'm like, well, I gotta go check it out, right? Like, I gotta go see it. So I go out there, and I know how close it is to Chicago. I know I'm a single girl, and I've seen the Dateline office there. So I know what I'm getting myself into. I have a carry permit. I take my pistol with me. I want to go down in these old tunnels down there that were drying kilns and see what's down in there, because I got to know. I'm a scientist. So they're pretty dirty and scary, so I've got a pair of boots on, and it was in the fall because I'm terrified of spiders. So it's really cold outside. I wait until they're good and dead. So I put on my leather jacket, and I've got a beanie on. It occurred to me as I was walking down through there that I've got this like flashlight, a leather jacket, and boots, and this like special hat. I even got my Glock right there too, which is just making me feel so much safer around these spiders, because I will shoot one, I don't care. I'm from Alaska. If something comes out and scares you, you can shoot it. Maybe not here. And so it's very, very, very adventurous in that regard, you know, kind of hunched over, walking through these like catacombs where you can get theoretically lost, or actually probably really lost. It's not especially safe. You don't know who you're going to run into down there. And anybody you're going to run into isn't like just out collecting for the March of Dimes, like selling those world's finest chocolate bars or something. It's going to be somebody that wants to roll you, take your money or something. So there's like all this spray paint down there, Satan rules, and I'm like, oh, hopefully not today down here. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. There is some adventure in archaeology. It's relatively rare. Most of my adventure has just been going to the White Castle and nearby where I got done zapping bricks. But there is some. So I put that in there just to let people know there is some adventure and fun in archaeology. And with that, I would love to open it up for any questions.